Welcome in to the Arkansas Sports Network's Hometown Sports Football Preview, proudly presented by Arkansas Tech University, D3 Auto Sales, and by Metcalf Trucking Company. Today, the ASN crew previews Class 2A.
Welcome in to the first ever ASN 2A breakdown, and I've got some friends of mine here to break down high school football across the state of Arkansas. We're going to do start with our 2A breakdown, and we're going to go all the way through the classes, and even 8-man, guys. Let me introduce guys that are here around the table. In the shot right now, you've got Alex Gallion, who is from Brooklyn. He's a new guy that we have with us. We're so glad to have Alex. Alex is an award-winning broadcaster. None of us at this table can say that but him. And so, Alex, glad to have you along.
Thank you, Brad. I appreciate it, man. I'm glad to be here.
My man, Duran Miller over here on my left. He has been with us at ASN now for 4 years, and we have had some good times together, and now we're venturing into new things. Duran, glad to have you.
Oh, yeah. Always good to be here. Always good to talk high school football.
All right. And then to my right here, we've got Carson Ward. If you have been paying any attention to our hometown sports, Arkansas football previews, you have seen him a lot, and he has done some great interviews, and we're just excited about having him as well. He's also the play-by-play guy at Conway Christian, and he's going to be seeing the Eagles through the playoffs this year, and maybe then we'll get him after that. Who knows?
Yeah. Really exciting. Getting to do this stuff. This is something that we have been talking about for some time now, and I guess ever since the basketball camp that we did,
yes,
we've kind of been discussing this, so I'm glad that it finally came together.
And then behind the camera right now, we've got another award winner. We've got Logan Gilly, yes. Just Gallion Gilly, man. It just right there. So Logan is also an award-winning producer, and he's also a Brooklyn guy. And let me just pump this while I've got a chance to do that. We worked with the Brooklyn team at the 2022 state playoffs in volleyball, and they were part of the AV team. Do we call it East? Do we call it? Okay, just AV, or is it East?
Yeah, it's AV.
Okay, so it's AV. It's not East.
There is East, but it's
okay,
AV.
Gotcha. Okay, so anyway, we do work with East programs across the state of Arkansas. We've had other people, Lamar, Nate Sparks is a guy that's been with us, and he's been a great help to us. We also want to mention before we get into it, guys that help us out, Bill Harshaw, who is behind the scenes. He'll be putting all the graphics together for this. And then we've got Aaron Powers, who helps us out, and others as well. So, again, appreciate everybody for joining us here. We're excited to be doing this for you. This is a part of our Hometown Sports Arkansas Football Series, and we're going to get right to it. Class 2A here. This is 2A is a bread and butter for ASN in a lot of ways. We do a lot of 2A football. Carlisle and Hazen have been right up our alley. Desark, another team that we've done quite a bit. Clarendon was a team that we did. Fordyce was 2A. They're 3A now. We've done some work over there as well. And we have done quite a bit. Mark Tree, Bigelow last year in the state semifinals. We've done a lot of 2A football. So we're, like I said, this is kind of our bread and butter here. And we're looking at teams that could win the conference championship. There's only 4 conferences in 2A. And so, Carson, we're going to just start right there. Guys, our teams that you think are contenders in each league.
Yeah. So starting in 2A1, there's basically, there's 4 playoff teams like you mentioned every year. And so you've got the defending state champion Bigelow Panthers are in that conference. You have Conway Christian in that conference, who returns a lot of seniors from last year's team. And every team that they lost to last season ended up playing in or won a state championship game. So they are coming back with a lot of expectations and a lot of really talented guys, some guys that are getting looked at by colleges and things like that. And Bigelow's defense is going to be pretty similar to what we saw last year, just as far as, getting in there, getting dirty, and making stops on all kinds of plays and things like that. And then Mount Ida moves in to that conference, and they're going to be they're pretty much a contender. They're a blue blood in Class 2A every single year, and Coach White does a fantastic job there. They run heavy offense, and they have a pretty solid defense every year. And Conway Christian and Mount Ida have a little bit of a rivalry from playing in the playoffs multiple times and playing in a lot of close games. And then Hector is in there. Hector is a team that's a contender every year to win conference, and I don't remember in my time Hector having a bad season.
Yeah.
They usually have at least a run to the playoffs every single season that I can remember. And so they do graduate Jackson Taylor. He was a really good quarterback for them last year, and they graduate Brent Casto. He was been their bell cow running back for the last couple of years, and PJ Henderson was an all-state receiver for them. So they have some guys that left that have been there and been their key guys. But they have some guys coming back. Drew Newport's their junior quarterback coming in this season.
Yeah.
He's really talented, dual threat guy. And then Grayson Mulder, he's probably going to be their top receiver this season. He's made a lot of plays. He's a really big physical receiver. And then, they have a lot of guys coming back on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and so they're going to have a pretty solid team this season.
So in the 2A1, if you had to pick a team, and I know you're the Conway Christian play-by-play guy, so let's not hold that against you because you can still pick your team. And let's just be honest with it. Conway Christian is a team that is a contender in that conference. Yeah. But if we had to hold your feet down to the fire, who would you say?
I would say Conway Christian, and I think that Bigelow and Conway Christian will be the two teams in the conference title again this year. Now, I would say a lot of teams that I've talked to and coaches that I've interviewed from that conference have said they'd be surprised if Bigelow lost a step, but with all the experience that Conway Christian is bringing back, it's not a knock on Bigelow. They're going to have another really solid defense this year. Jaden Dunlap is there. He's been a really solid contributor, had like 140 tackles or something crazy like that last season. He's going to be their bell cow running back this year. He's built a little bit like Marshawn Lynch. I mean, he's just big, physical. He's going to run you over. And then defensively, Braden Winningham transferred in from Morrilton. He was a guy that I have as a potential player of the year guy in 2A. He's really that good. Had 5 sacks against Conway Christian when he was a sophomore at Bigelow in the conference title game. And then they have Silas Schiestel. Schiestel's a guy that's had over 100 tackles, I think, last year at defensive end, and he's been a part of that Bigelow defense that is not given up a whole lot in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years since Coach Starks has taken over and taken them to a whole new level. And but Conway Christian's got a really good offense, really good defense, really balanced team. They run a spread offense, and you can look at a lot of guys on that team that have a lot of experience. Jaron Thomas is a guy that you hear a lot about. He's their quarterback. Brady DeMarcus is their running back, and he had over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, all-state performer last season. And then they had some guys that were out for injury. Deegan Meeks was a receiver for them that's really fast. I mean, lightning fast guy. But he does have some injury issues he's going to have to overcome this season to get in there and be a playmaker. And then to me, they're going to have one of the best offensive lines in the state. Now, Conway Christian, usually known more as a skill player team, but they're going to have some offensive linemen that are coming back. They returned 4 out of 5 offensive linemen from last season, and their defensive line has all-state performer Garrison Greer. So, 2A1, it's going to be a pretty loaded conference this season. I would pick Conway Christian to win if I had to put money on it.
Let's throw it to the other side of the table here, and let's let Alex and Duran kind of get in on the conversation here, guys. 2A1, we talked quite a bit about that. 2A1, it looks like a pretty tough conference here. Again, you've got Mountainburg. That's one that wasn't really mentioned. Her team with tradition. You've got Conway Christian. You've got Bigelow. You got Mount Ida. I mean, that's a really, really tough conference. Throw Hector in there as well. Who is it that you guys look at and like over in the 2A1?
You want to start first?
I can. A lot of good information there from Carson.
Yes.
Bigelow, we were aware of Bigelow last year. We got we got information from them at times during the season, not as much as we would like. We had them ranked a little lower. When we finally did that game, we were in the playoffs. We did Mark Tree Bigelow as our game of the week, and we were just impressed. I mean, at every facet of their program, what they do. And they had a lot of young guys. The guy's name escapes me that had the about a 70-yard interception return. He was a sophomore.
Easton Platt.
Yeah, Easton Platt. And took it all the way back. just as I was going through the roster and learning them more and more, there was just more and more guys that were like, man, this guy's just a sophomore. This guy's just a junior. So, I mean, if I had to pick, it's hard for me after what I saw against Bigelow and kind of have them a little bit under the radar last year. I would have to go with Bigelow as probably my number one. But it's like Carson said, they're both – I think it's going to come down between them and Conway Christian. And that's hard to say when you got Mount Ida moving into conference. Mount Ida is a tough team every year. I mean, they run that kind of a wing tee type formation, and they just old school football.
Yeah.
And they're tough. And you called them a blue blood, but I think they're maroon. I'm just messing with you. Yeah, but no, Mount Ida, it's gonna make that conference even deeper and really give them a good chance to. Put their name in the hat there as well as a contender. Hector, like you talked about with Jackson Taylor and a lot of those guys moving on, that team was loaded. I watched those guys as sophomores and juniors and move up last year, and that was their year to really make a deep run. They're not going to go anywhere. I mean, they definitely, I think they'll take a little bit of a step back. You know, they had Carlisle on the ropes last year. We did that game as well in the playoffs there in I think it was the second round or third round after they beat Mineral Springs, which a lot of people didn't see coming. Well, I know, Carson, you said you called that one last year, but so Hector will have their name in the mix, and Mountainburg was kind of right there flirting. Did they get in the playoffs last year? They were right there on the line.
I think they were on the line.
Westside got in over them.
There you go.
Okay, so they're at the bottom. I think those four are the teams though that really have a chance, and I'm going to go with Bigelow. This is my pick.
Honestly, Carson, great detail from just Class 2A in general. I'm still trying to learn, Class 2A in general. I kind of just talk about, Bigelow's, obviously their playoff run last year. They would beat Mount Ida 41-13. Mm-hmm. They would go on to beat Des Arc in the quarterfinals 34-14. They would you wouldn't really call it an upset. Mark Tree's obviously they're a very, very, very powerful team, but they beat Mark Tree. That was a 36-20 win, and obviously beating EPC in the championship. Man, I can't really give the great detail like Carson gave about 2A. If I had to go down and pick probably the two top teams in this in Class 2A1, it's going to end up being Conway Christian and Bigelow. To me, I feel like I have to go with Bigelow. I know Conway Christian, they are losing Grayson Wilson. That's a big quarterback loss. I kind of look at Conway Christian's playoff run last year as well. They lost in the quarterfinals 34-20. So I think Conway Christian, they are going to be a powerful team this year. I think Bigelow is just going to have that step over them.
This side of the table is in agreement. I'm going with the Conway Christian Eagles. I just feel like that this is their year. I know that one of the things that they've kind of emphasized over there at Conway Christian is that this group of kids is made for it. This group of kids is the team that they expect to go out. And, last year they were so close. They were so close. And being a team that was a contending team for the state championship. So I'm going to go with Conway Christian. Let's go to 2A2, and I'll tell you one of the things about the 2A2. That conference right there is probably the strongest of the 2A when it comes down to just all of the teams that you've got. Cross County, going to be very, very good. Des Arc, going to be very, very good. Earl always has athletes to put on the field. East Poinsett County. Izard County making their 11-man debut from 8-man, who they had a very successful run in the 8-man. Mark Tree, a state title contender. Lee County and McCrory. McCrory just won state like 2-3 years ago. So, I mean, that is a very tough conference. When I look at that conference myself, you look at East Poinsett County, Mark Tree, Des Arc, Cross County. To me, those are the four that really stick out as possible playoff teams for that conference. But can you really overlook McCrory? No. Lee County's going to have athletes for sure. And then Izard County, like I said, they've had success. Earl just sent a kid to D1 at Vanderbilt. And his name slips my mind right now.
McVeigh.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. McVeigh. Vanderbilt picked him up. We had him 2 years ago as a junior, and he just dominated. Now, they didn't beat Carlisle that night because Carlisle had a kid that went for 380-something yards rushing that night and like 6 touchdowns. But it was an unbelievable game, a lot of fun to be a part of. But McVeigh will put on a show. But Earl's always going to have athletes. But the 4 that stick out to me, Cross County, Des Arc, EPC, Mark Tree. I'm going to go ahead and throw my pick right now with it. I'm going to go with the Mark Tree Indians.
Yeah. Looking at 2A2, like you said, this has been the conference that everybody, when the last 2 years in the playoffs, it's been 2A1 versus 2A2 in the first round of the playoffs. 2 seasons ago, when Bigelow did not win the state title, they were upset by Earl, who was the 4th seed out of this conference in the first round of the playoffs. Every single team from the 2A2 beat the teams from the 2A1 in the playoffs 2 years ago. Now that has changed. The 2A1 got stronger, and the 2A2 has pretty much stayed fairly strong, like you mentioned. To me, Cross County is going to be there. Coach Van Pascal is their new head coach, moved over from, I believe, Heber Springs. And they have on the defensive line, they have a 4-star prospect who's a junior. He's the number 79 overall prospect in America. So having a guy like that at the 2A level is, invaluable. But whenever it comes to Mark Tree, they also have a 4-star prospect, TJ Hodges. He's a junior. Me and Jerram were talking beforehand that he has a lot of interest from a lot of schools right now, and I'm sure a lot of interest from a lot of defensive coordinators too right now. So they're going to have a team this year. They are not one to write off. Kenyon Carter is an electric quarterback. That's the best way to describe him. I think it's just electric. Last season they came down to the wire with East Poinsett County for the conference title. I think that game went to double overtime at East Poinsett County, and then McCrory has a running back named Levi Tucker. He ran for, I believe, close to 1,600 yards last season. He's going to be a really good player. Coach Campbell does a great job there. And then Des Arc, talking to Coach Mark Courtney when I did an interview with him at Clarendon, he said they're a team to watch out for. And Coach Barbary does a fantastic job there. They've adopted their offense after the Harding Bison offense, and that flex bone that'll just punch you in the face and not look back. And so they've got a really physical, great group of kids over there. And East Poinsett County loses Dennis Gaines from last season. He's now playing at UCA, but he set a lot of rushing records in the state of Arkansas. Now they have Jacob Gaines, his younger brother. He's going to be their running back this season. And Coach Powell does a good job over there at East Poinsett County, but I would have to pick Mark Tree to be the champion of that conference as well.
Yeah, TJ Hodges, you hit on a little bit. Special kid. It was, we did the Bigelow game last year. I think I had him the year before. He was just a 9th grader then. But Hodges is, he's was a little bit on the slender side last year, about 6 foot 6'1", about 180. I think he was listed. He might have been less than that by the time we got the playoffs, but they're really trying to put weight on him, get him up to about 190. He went down I think it was in Dallas, a camp, and put up some big-time numbers. Supposedly there's all kinds of schools talking about him. I've heard there's interest from Auburn, USC, all over just about. If that kid can see, when we did that Bigelow game, I wish he could have got the ball a little bit more. They like to use him in space, get him out in the open. I feel like if he can get up to 190 or over, closer to 185, and really be able to touch the ball 25, 30 times a game, he's going to be able to put up some incredible special numbers, like possibly 2,000, over that all-purpose easily, if he can stay healthy. So he's really good. Carter, you mentioned him as well. Great quarterback for that offense. He, like you said, he's electric. You get both those guys out, and they've got some other weapons as well that they got a lot of speed, and that is the team that I'm taking as to win that conference. EPC, like you said, they're losing Gaines, and he was a special kid there. Got his little brother coming up. They have a lot of talent. They always do. Des Arc, we've done numerous Des Arc games over the last few years. Bell, what's his first name?
Davion
yes. Bell. He's another guy that I think they need to get him more involved. Last year, they're losing their quarterback they had for a 3-year starter there, who was just you remember his name?
Cash Flanagan.
Yeah, Flanagan. Mm-hmm. He was a really good quarterback. So that's going to be interesting to see who replaces him and what that looks like. Flanagan was more of a Tebow top, more of a hard-nosed runner. Wasn't like a shifty guy, really. So it's going to be interesting to see what they get going with that offense because they're dynamic when they get their athletes out in space. And Bell's one of those guys. If he can get more touches, kind of like we're talking about Hodges and Mark Tree, they're just going to be even tougher to stop. You hit on McCroy. Izzard County is interesting coming back. It's not an easy road, though, being thrown into the 2A2. They had a lot of athletes. We did the Rector game with them last year. I was shocked to what I saw in 8-man with Rector and Izzard County. There was athletes all over the field. If you've not been around a lot of 8-man, when you go to the atmosphere, you're thinking, no, they're going to have 19 guys. And they didn't have a whole lot, don't get me wrong. But what they had was extremely talented. So don't count those guys out to make a little bit of noise down there in the bottom. Cross County, another one that I think is going to do really good this year, and they're going to make one of those top 4 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah. So when you mentioned the Desart quarterback spot being open, I wanted to just chip in a little bit there with what Coach Barbary told me when I did the interview. Of course, everybody can go back and watch that interview that we've posted on YouTube. But Coach Barbary said that the favorite right now would be Walker Harris. Walker Harris played in that option backfield, the flex bone or however they label it. I believe it's flex bone is what they call it. But they have a sophomore. His name is Hudson Goodman. He's going to be competing for that spot as well. So he said that right now Walker Harris is the favorite. But if Hudson Goodman can come in and show that he can adjust the senior high level really well, that spot could be his. But he said that we're not really going to know 100% until that first snap of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, and see if there's more speed there maybe and what they kind of do if that gets them in more of an option game at times or we'll just see how that works out. But Desart's definitely one of the teams there. But I'm going to go with Mark Tree as my favorite.
Man, I agree with you, Brad. I think this Cross County Thunderbird team, obviously with the brand new coach Pascal coming in, I think they have a lot of momentum coming in. I know they're going to run the option a lot. That's what me and him talked about that. Overall, I think when you kind of, in my opinion, these top 3 teams, it's going to be Mark Tree, EPC, Cross County, and maybe even Desark. I think that could be a good pick. I do think this Cross County team does have potential to make the playoffs, and I think they have potential to go far in the playoffs with a brand new head coach. Overall, though, if I had to pick to win the conference, it's probably got to be Mark Tree. Yeah. Mark Tree, they had a really, really good playoff run, and Coach Waylon Dunn, he's really excited for this upcoming season. I had the pleasure to talk to him. And obviously, returning a guy like Kenyon Carter. Carter's not only a really good quarterback, but he's also a really, really solid point guard for that Mark Tree team.
Leave it to the Brooklyn guy to get basketball in there. I mean, come on.
I'm sorry, but I mean, come on. And Mark Tree's also defending state champions, and it
translates.
Yes, and so Kenyon Carter is a multiple sport athlete, and this Mark Tree team, they have multiple teams or multiple players on that football squad that also plays for the basketball team. So, quick players, I have to pick Mark Tree.
I mean, I'm with you. It's hard to go against Mark Tree in this conference. Let's move on down to go ahead.
I was just going to add real quick, and we brought up Pascal a few times there. He's been around. I mean, he's a really good coach.
Yeah, so I believe he coached at Wynn a long time ago as well.
Yeah, and he took over for the great Frank Vons from Alma. I think he was the next coach there. If I'm remembering right, that sounds right.
I think you could be right. Yeah,
I could be getting mixed up. with somebody else.
It's been a long time ago now.
Yeah, I think it was Pascal. I'm pretty sure, and he threw the ball more than Alma had thrown in a while.
Yeah.
But he's got a lot of athletes across county to work with. But I hope I'm right. I'll have to go back and look when we're done. But.
So one of the things about Cross County is that he did coach at Wynn, and it really wasn't that long ago. And how many kids come from Wynn? I know that they had some last year that came from Wynn. How many of those come from Wynn this year? Obviously,
I think there's a handful.
Transitioning from 5A to 2A, that's a very, very big advantage for a kid that's coming from Wynn to Cross County. They're not very far away from each other. There's a lot of things going on in that dynamic there.
And that's probably something we should have touched on at the start of this is we're giving these picks, but there's movement all the time.
That's it.
There's a transfer portal now.
Sometimes we do interviews 2 months ago, and things have changed since that interview. Even 2 weeks ago, sometimes.
Right.
So there's a lot of movement with a lot of these picks. So you got to take that into consideration.
Moving down to the 2A3, the big news down in 2A3 is that Junction City has dropped from 3A to 2A.
Uh-oh.
Junction City got really hot at the end of the year last year, made it into the top 8 of 3A, and a lot of people expect the Junction City Dragons to come back and be a part of that run. They had that run for so long that they really dominated the 2A for a long time, and moving back down to 2A. They're my number one pick. They're your number one pick as far as overall as number one ranking preseason. It's hard to go against Junction City in the 2A3 to win the conference, but I will say this. Murfreesboro, we watched them last year. In fact, last year the highest rated game ever on ASN was Murfreesboro and Mineral Springs.
Yeah.
30,000 views on that game.
Yeah.
And that was an unbelievable game. It was just unreal. The atmosphere
Huge.
there, right?
Yeah.
But what would you guess there? 3,000 plus people there
yeah.
at the game.
I would guess
30,000 views. That's unreal.
It was an electric atmosphere.
And I will tell you, Murfreesboro is an up and coming team.
Yeah.
An up and coming team.
Completely agree.
Very, very tough team. Carson, throwing it your way.
Well, Junction City's the favorite. There's no doubt about that. Coach Ball took over last season, I believe, was his first year as the head coach, and did a great job. Took that team to 9 wins. They had struggled a little bit the previous season. And, Junction City is a team that always has athletes every single year. They have a player there named Tay Owens this year. I believe he's going to be taking over at quarterback for them. Dominique Grimes is going to probably play some receivers, some running back. They're going to put him all over the field. He's a guy with maybe even D1 potential playing at Junction City. And then moving to Murfreesboro, they had the best defense by points per game in the entire state of Arkansas last season. They only gave up 8.6 points per game, I believe was the number. And Coach Cheshire, from year one to year two, they took a huge leap. And Mineral Springs is going to be another team that's going to be in the mix there. They have Katrivan Thomas graduating, Jace Emerson's graduating. And those two guys, I believe Duran called him Icebox Emerson.
Let me say this about them. You want to talk about the best-looking football team I've ever seen in high school football, just about, on the field. That Mineral Springs team last year, they just looked the part. It was unbelievable.
Their talent is insane.
Yeah. And so replacing Thomas this year is going to be Malik Matthews. He's their running back this season. And, really, Coach Hathcock has taken that team to another level with the talent that they have. And then, just looking at that team, like you said, they look the part. Right. And they really are going to be a competitive team in that conference this season. Dirks is another one of those blue blood teams. Mm-hmm. They're up there with the Mount Idas and the Junction Cities, and the Murfreesboro now is going to be one of those up and coming blue blood schools. And
right.
And they're always in there. Now that Gurdon's back down, Gurdon's a blue blood school. They have had a lot of success in their program, and Coach Jackson is there. He runs a flex bow and option style offense, and so they're a very physical team, and they have an offensive lineman who's committed to Harding, and so they have a really, really solid program down there too, with a lot of tradition. And so that's 2A3 is going to be a tough, competitive conference. Lafayette County is a team that always is going to have athletes. Spring Hill moves in from 8-man, and they were in the 8-man state title last season. Foreman's a team with a lot of tradition, but they've kind of had a couple down years the last couple of years. Right. But they're, as we've seen with 2A, with Murfreesboro last year, you never know who's just going to spring up and have a monster season. So 2A3 could surpass 2A2 and 2A1 as the top dog, the top conference, now that Gurdon and Junction City move into that conference. Really looking forward to that. But Junction City is, like you said, they're the top dog. They're the undisputed favorite in that conference this season.
Yes, and talking about Coach Cheshire over at Murfreesboro, he's a Nashville guy, and he's brought that tradition, that culture that he grew up on in Nashville to Murfreesboro. And you go back to the greatest Nashville teams ever, 1996. You gotta list them as one of them. Quarterback Jeremy McBride, Greg Washington, wide receiver. I think that if you go back and look at their score, I mean, almost every game was like 42-7, 49-7, stuff like that. They beat Osceola in the championship 35-7, or I think that's what it was, 35-7 or 35-12. It's a long time ago, but my point is, their defense. Everybody talked about the offense of that team, and they were breaking records. That was back when McBride was breaking records for them. Brooks Coatney was breaking records at Greenwood. Right before Josh Floyd, Rhett Lashley, all that kind of got going with Malzahn and the spread. But their defense is a culture thing at Nashville, and he's brought that with him to Murfreesboro, and that's why you saw that. I think it was 8.6 points per game. Like Brad alluded to, when we did that Mineral Springs game for the conference championship, Mineral Springs had slaughtered everybody all year, and then there wasn't a whole lot of people outside of Murfreesboro that thought they were going to win that game. It was one of the best games we've ever been a part of. Went in the overtime for the conference championship and got that big win. I was able to interview Coach after the game, and it was a special moment. And when you talk to him, you just feel what I'm talking about with this tradition. So Murfreesboro is hard to pick over, but Junction City is definitely who I got to take right now. They got hot at the end of the year last year. They had struggled for Junction City. They were just dominant, and they went downhill a little bit, but they got it going again last year. Coach Ball doing great things there. I think this season they really are the team that everybody's going to have to chase. We'll see how it works out. Like you said, Dirk's coming in. Dirk's really had a bad year last year, and that was not typical for them. That's like you said, a blue blood. They're a really good team. Mineral Springs, we know they've got a lot of talent. They've still got several guys back from that team. Amerson, I nicknamed him Icebox Amerson the other night. He was a stud on both sides of the field. And I didn't know he's going to Arkansas Tech. Found that out, so it doesn't surprise me. Garden's spooky. It's always spooky down there in Garden. You got the Garden Ghost Light, but they're definitely a team. And then Lafayette County, we've mentioned, really, really quality team. We were talking about Mount Ida earlier. It seems like just a few years ago, Foreman and Mount Ida were playing for the state championship. So that team is down a little bit at the moment, but there's always talent in Foreman. Spring Hill come out of nowhere last year in 8-man, made it all the way to championship. Head coach Greg Smith, he's been around. He was over at Prescott years ago, doing great things there. So we'll see how they get acclimated back into 2A football. But overall, I think Junction City takes it, and Murfreesboro is going to be right there in the hills, though. And then there's really no drop-off right after Junction City. I mean, they're all kind of – you can lump 2 or 3 teams in there.
I mean, obviously, everyone talks about Junction City and probably going number 1, may even win state this year. If I had to pick them, I think I probably would pick them number 1. Obviously, they had a really, really hot end of the year last season. I feel like this is a very underrated conference within Class 2A. There's many, many teams here that have potential. Junction City, Murfreesboro, Dirks, who is coming off of a kind of a lopsided season last year, obviously, but they're looking to improve. Like you said earlier, they got that offensive lineman who's committed. He's a Division I commit, correct? I don't know.
At Gurdon.
Yeah. Oh, that's at Gurdon.
He's committing to Harding. Yeah.
Excuse me, but and
you might as well be Division I if he's committed to Harding.
Yeah, practically. And you want to talk about Gurdon too, and obviously, and they got a really, really solid team over there. And you want to talk about obviously Spring Hill coming off of the 8-man state championship, losing an overtime director. So and Foreman, who's actually coming off, they have a brand new head coach coming in this year.
Yep.
So
Coach Baker.
Yeah. So and I believe Coach Baker actually, I think he came from Texas. I believe that's where he last coached at.
He come from Oklahoma, actually.
Okay.
Came out of Westville, Oklahoma. Actually, I know Coach Baker very well. Very good guy. Seriously, one of the best guys that you're ever going to know as far as a coach goes. And he spent a lot of time at Huntsville as an assistant, and he ended up at Westville. He's been a little bit everywhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he's down there in Foreman now. And Coach Baker's going to get him going.
Yes, he will. And obviously Mineral Springs as well. I mean, just the amount of talent that team had last season. Obviously, it's really hard to pick. This is a really, really tough conference, and this is a conference that I feel like this is going to have the state championship team. It's going to come out of 2A3. I really believe so. So if I had to pick, I think Junction City number 1.
Hard to go against them right now.
Yeah, Murfreesboro a very, very close second.
Yeah, Brad Cheshire's a guy. 2A4, we are going to have to move this along fairly quickly. 2A4, I feel like Carlisle is the team that is kind of up there now as not just the top team for this year, but really kind of the top program there in the 2A4.
Well, you just take some people off in Hazen.
Right, well, Hazen's right there with them. They're probably right there as number 2. I don't know that this conference gets as much love as the rest of them do, but I like Carlisle in this one. If I had to choose my teams right now, Carlisle and Hazen, Poen, and possibly Clarendon as your top 4 there in that conference.
Yep. So Carlisle is far and away the favorite this season. Talking to everybody, talking to Coach Brisankin at Hazen, talking to Coach Wilson at Carlisle, he's very confident in his skill guys this season. We were talking off camera beforehand, and you said that the Carlisle offensive line the last couple of years has been the X factor for Class 2A. So there's a question mark there. Luke Petrus graduates. He was a two-time All-State lineman on both sides of the ball. He played defensive and offensive line. He was a stud.
And he was their fullback too, and they didn't give him the ball near enough. He was a stud, H-back kind of guy.
Yeah, so really physical guy, and they have Gabe Boyle returning. He's a great linebacker. They have Ty Tanksley is going to be their quarterback this year. Gavin Davis is a really electric wide receiver they have with elite speed. And Ty Tanksley, interesting thing about him is he's like a top 100 baseball recruit as a pitcher. So he's got a rocket arm. Hazen, they are 2 years removed from a state title with Luke King. And, that team was unbeatable pretty much that season. And, you move in to that's going to be a team with their quarterback. I believe his name is J.J. Pinckney. He's really fast. He's a really elusive guy. And then they have some strong offensive linemen there. And then that 4 spot in that conference is going to be up for grabs. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be in the mix for that last spot in that conference. But Poen, their quarterback is his name is Colt Barrett. He's got a rocket arm. I was there at the game where they played Conway Christian in the playoffs. They went toe-to-toe with Conway Christian's defense that was really good all season, and lost by 1 score and put up 32 points. And so Colt Barrett's got an arm. He's losing some receivers from last season, but obviously he's grown up around football. So to me, those guys that you mentioned, they're the top 3. They're the locks almost for those playoffs, those three playoff spots. But that 4th one, Clarendon, is going to be probably the favorite to get in that spot right now, but it's up for grabs. Clarendon's not a lock. They're a very solid team and a solid coach and a solid program, but that's not a lock in that 4th spot.
Throw it to the other side of the table.
I'll start out if you're
No,
okay.
you go ahead.
So we'll talk about Carlisle first. I got to have them as my favorite right now. They do lose a lot of their dominant offensive and defensive linemen over the last couple of years. You mentioned Gavin Davis. We talked about him off camera a little bit before. That kid is electric. I don't think they beat Hector. Hector played about as good as they could have last year in the playoffs against Carlisle. Had them on the ropes late into the game. Gavin Davis was the difference. They were doubling them, they were bracketing them, and they had some good guys like Jackson Taylor covering them. Different guys. The receiver, what was his name again? P.J. Henderson. Guys like that, and they couldn't cover him. I mean, he is a huge difference maker. And Carlisle has been more of a. You were talking about him earlier in the running back they had when they were running all over. Was it EPC?
J.J. Sullivan was there.
Yeah. Had 6 touchdowns, 300 yards or whatever it was. He, they were a little bit more of a ground and pound, 3 yards cloud of dust, and they've evolved a little bit. You watch Charleston kind of spread you out a little bit, and you don't think of Carlisle as a spread, but their coach there now that's been there for a while, he's a Carlisle guy, grew up in that system. Yeah. They spread it out a little bit, and they kind of do some different things, and that's going to help them with Gavin Davis on the outside. And they've just always got talent there at Carlisle. Really good program. Hazen, they graduated the little running back. You remember his name?
Braylon Anderson.
Yes.
Yeah, Braylon Anderson. I mean, he was kind of like Gavin Davis a little bit. Did a little bit more things running the football, but that'll hurt them a little bit. But
Schlenker's gone from Hazen too. Justin Schlenker.
Yeah, and Schlenker was a really good one. So they're down a little bit. I think Carlisle's definitely the team that you put at the top. Just trying to figure out who the next 3 are there to make the playoff run. And I think England gets a little overlooked at times. England's had some pretty good, solid teams over the years. There's always a few athletes that come out of England that shock you. What was it? Kid went to Oregon a few years ago in basketball, I want to say. Or
there's one that. There was a kid that played the Super Bowl this year from England.
Wide receiver.
Yes.
That was from about, 16-ish, 17, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Anyways, my point is, though, they got a lot of talent in England, and they've really kind of been solid.
B.J. Thompson.
Yeah. Thompson, and that team could get in there for that 3rd and 4th spot. I do like Poen. I like that pick. You've got them up there pretty high, Carson, with the quarterback Barrett. I really like them to maybe make a move. Hazen's kind of been there as that number 2 or number 1. Them and Carlisle kind of gone back and forth the last 3-4 years. So those are the ones. Picking that 4th spot's the hard one. And Clarendon does have talent. They got a good coach. Bearden, I interviewed their head coach this year. He was very optimistic. He's trying to, stay there. And, that Bearden was such a powerhouse for so many years. And they've kind of hit some rough times. But I do think they got the right coach. He's trying to change the culture a little bit there and kind of get those guys to kind of just take a step forward every season. And I do think Bearden will have an opportunity if they can stay, they don't have a lot of depth, but if they can stay injury free, I think they have a chance to get in that 4 or 5 spot right there. So that's where I'm at. What do you got?
I mean, obviously, you talk about a team like Carlisle, and kind of looking at their playoff run last year, they were so close from going to the state championship. They lost by 5 to EPC. In my opinion, honestly, I can't really tell you a whole lot about Class 2A4. I'm probably just going to give it to Carlisle. I know they got some returning players coming off from the team last year. I think they're going to keep the momentum that they had from last season, and I think that they could make a lengthy playoff run. And obviously, you can't count out teams like a team like England as well. They've had so many athletes. Hazen's very strong too, but I probably have to give it to Carlisle.
And if you haven't ever seen the Hazen-Carlisle rivalry, this Highway 70 SmackDown, number one, you can watch it on ASN this year, but that's a great rivalry in 2A, and a lot of fun. And there's a lot of great rivalries in 2A, and really a lot of good football that is played on the 2A classification. Before we go, we've got just a short time. We're going to give our picks to win the state championship, but let's talk about 2A D3 Auto Sales MVP candidates. Let's talk a little bit about those guys in Class 2A.
Yeah, so we have some notes here that I put together in front of us, and my offensive player of the year, Dominic Grimes of Junction City. He's a wide receiver, but he's probably better labeled as just athlete. If they were recruiting him out of high school, if he was one of those recruits on 24/7 or on 3 or whatever, then that's what they would probably label him as.
Yeah.
And then defensively, I have Braden Winningham of Bigelow. Now, Braden Winningham's a guy, when he was a sophomore, set the Bigelow school record against Conway Christian for sacks in a game with 5. So that tells you what kind of speed and electricity and strength that he has. Transferred out of Morrilton. He was at Morrilton last season. Now comes back to Bigelow for his senior season. To me, he and Silas Schiestel are right there. Mm-hmm. And then if I had to put another one on offense, I'd probably say Brady DeMarcus, running back at Conway Christian. But, there's a lot of guys you could put in that spot. Malik Matthews coming in at Mineral Springs will be up there. Drew Newport, I think, will have a good season. And the new quarterback at Hector, Kenyon Carter, and TJ Hodges will be up there from Mark Tree, and Jacob Gaines will be up there as well. So a lot of really talented guys offensively and defensively. But I'm really excited about 2A this year. That, like you mentioned, the rivalries are always, the best in my opinion. But I'm biased, so. But really excited about that and the players and everything like that this season.
We'll go around the table real quick and let's talk about state championship picks. To me, this seems like a solid consensus just about in this group, and I think a lot of us would say Junction City as the favorite to win the championship. But I definitely think there's some teams that can throw a kink into that. Obviously, Conway Christian is one of those teams. Mark Tree is another one of those teams. Carlisle is another one of those teams. I think that those guys, you got athletes like at Mineral Springs, Murfreesboro with Brad Cheshire, one of the best coaches in the 2A. I don't think that's any doubt about that. I think those teams you can look at. Desart may be another type of team.
Bigelow.
Bigelow's another one. And I think that we've been waiting for Desart to just kind of break out. You know what I mean? Desart's been right there for so long. Would this be the year? So I think those are teams. Anybody else got anything on any of those?
Yeah, I would just say that there's those 4 teams. And talking with a lot of the coaches, it's been Junction City, Conway Christian, Mark Tree, Carlisle. Those have been the 4. It's those 4 and everybody else. Now, Ozark's been one that's been thrown in the conversation. Murfreesboro's been one that's thrown in the conversation. Mineral Springs has been one that's been thrown in the conversation. And, because of Mineral Springs' offense, Murfreesboro's defense, Hector's one that's been thrown in the conversation because they're pretty consistently winning every single season. So really exciting teams, and there's really not – it's not like Hazen 2 years ago where everybody knew when the season kicked off. They're the ones that you could put your whole bank balance on, and they're going to win.
Right.
So, really exciting stuff, and there's no lock to win it this season.
Cross County is another one. Lots of athletes there. Mm-hmm. Anybody on this side of the table before we wrap it up?
Quickly, I think the top two teams, I completely agree with the top four teams that we have. I've got Mark Tree winning the state championship. I think they have the talent, and I think they have what it takes to go all the way this year with Coach Whalen Dunn.
I have, trying to find my notes here, it's tough here. So I've got Junction City winning it all. So and right behind them, I have to give it to Mark Tree. If you're just talking right now, we're in August here. Mm-hmm. I've got I've got Junction City, Mark Tree. Then after that, Carlisle's in that mix. Conway Christian's in the mix. Cross County, you got to throw up there. I'm not sleeping on Murfreesboro or Bigelow, though. They opened my eyes last year. They still return a lot of talent, even though they lost some guys. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. Desart, I don't know if I mentioned them, but they're up there as well. And Mineral Springs, they just have too much talent to not
just throw
mention their name.
Yeah.
That's right.
If I could, before we sign off here, one last thing. Mount Ida returns probably, I think, 10 players on both sides of the ball. They're my sleeper team.
There you go.
They're my sleeper team to get up there and make a playoff run. If you see them start to be ultra competitive with Bigelow and Conway Christian in conference play, you better watch out because Mount Ida returns a lot of players, and they are very fundamentally sound in what they do. They've been running the same offense since Pee Wee football. They're going to be a team to watch out for.
They're always very solid.
Dude, someone named East Poinsett County, we got to throw them in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Too many athletes there as well.
So, yeah, they're definitely up there.
So we want to say thank you for watching our 2A preview here on the Arkansas Sports Network as a part of our Hometown Sports series. It's been a fun time. We're going to be breaking down 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, and 7A, as well as 8-man. Make sure you're looking for that content on YouTube and Facebook. For all of these guys, we're going to sign off saying thank you, and we'll be back next time with the 3A breakdown.
Thanks again for joining us on the Arkansas Sports Network's Hometown Sports Football Preview. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Arkansas Sports Network on YouTube to catch more previews and all the latest updates on your favorite teams. It's the ASN Classic, Elkins versus Warren, September the 13th. Tickets are available at the link in the description.